Hi class, today we are going to be talking about arthritis. Arthritis is a musculoskeletal disease, so this lecture should follow the lecture on musculoskeletal health. We are going to be talking about two main types of arthritis, and they are osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. And so we're going to get into those in detail coming up. These are pictures of normal versus arthritic joints. On the left, you can see a normal joint. There's no inflammation. There's healthy synovial fluid. And then on the right, you can see different types of arthritis. There's osteoarthritis, where you can see bone rubbing on bone, and this space between the bones has worn away. And then there's rheumatoid arthritis, where you can see there's some bone erosion happening, but you don't necessarily have the bone on bone, but you do instead have inflammation of the synovial membrane, which is kind of the space surrounding this joint and the space that's normally supposed to keep it fluid and cushy. So we're talking about osteoarthritis, and osteo indicates bone, and rheumatoid arthritis, which is actually an autoimmune disease. Okay, so first, osteoarthritis. Osteoarthritis is the most common type of arthritis, and it involves inflammation of the bones and the joints. This can increase with aging, of course, because we're talking about nutrition and aging, and it occurs more predominantly in women versus men. It is deteriorating and degenerative, which means it continually gets worse. It never gets better. It's kind of a cumulative effect. And it's usually around specific joints, such as the hips, the hands, and the knees. Hips, hip, hand, and knee. But it could be anywhere, but these are the most common joints that are effective. It's very painful and can affect quality of life. For example, ability to drive or cook or open a medication container or button your shirt, etc. What are the risk factors for osteoarthritis? So, of course, aging, excessive weight, trauma, muscle weakness, repetitive joint use. And repetitive joint use and trauma sometimes, but not always, go together. This could be in the case of, say, an athlete who's maybe had repetitive knee injury or repetitive use of their hands. This is actually decently common in rock climbers or soccer players or football players, things like that. Weight doesn't cause the osteoarthritis, but if one is at risk for the osteoarthritis and they are overweight, that weight puts more strain on those bones and those joints and more pressure on those bone ends, which can then rub together and make it much more painful. So how are we going to prevent and treat this? Exercise, you would think exercise would make it worse, but it actually doesn't, because exercise releases many anti-inflammatory compounds as well as builds muscles that can help stabilize joints. Exercise also weight bearing, so some kinds can help rebuild bones. However, with exercise, you do want to do low impact exercises and obviously under a doctor's supervision. And if somebody is overweight, they would be instructed to do their best to lose weight. They would want to avoid any sorts of inflammatory fats, such as trans fats, and then limit their consumption of omega-6s while focusing on consumption of omega-3s. Diet. So what we know about diet and osteoarthritis, I have heard one researcher actually describe as the Wild West, meaning lots and lots of people out there looking for gold and not really finding it. We have tried so many things to try to deal with osteoarthritis, but the majority of them have not been as effective as we've hoped. However, some of them aren't harmful for us, and so there's no real issue with trying them. So for example, polyunsaturated fatty acids are omega-3s. There's been lots of research done in animals, but according to the most recent meta-analysis, we haven't seen statistically significant results in humans as a singular therapy, meaning if that's the only thing somebody's taking for their osteoarthritis, it may not help. However, if somebody is taking, say, an anti-inflammatory medication and then they add some omega-3s, that might work as an adjunct therapy, meaning it helps the therapy that they're taking work even better. And we know there is relatively low risk of taking omega-3s for most people, and most people don't get enough of them. So I would say this is a reasonable intervention to at least try, even though statistically they haven't seen huge benefit. Vitamin C has had mixed results. In some studies, it's actually made arthritis better. However, in other studies, it's made it worse. And observational studies have seen that people with low vitamin C intakes do have higher rates of osteoarthritis. So what I would say is best to take vitamin C and getting it from natural food sources versus taking potentially an excessive amount of a supplement. I mentioned omega-3s a little bit, but vitamin E and omega-3s together, we would think these might help because they could reduce free radical damage and they work as antioxidants. And in these types of arthritises, there is quite a lot of inflammation happening. Vitamin E seems to have short-term effects on treatment versus long-term effects. And it might reduce oxidative stress and free radicals, but long-term, they haven't been able to see much. And then vitamin D levels, we would think that this would help, and people who have low levels of vitamin D do have higher rates of progression through osteoarthritis. We know vitamin D is very important to maintaining bone. However, when studies have been conducted on vitamin D supplements, we have not seen any significant effect. An additional intervention that has been tried for osteoarthritis, and I bring it up because it was something that I had not heard about, but it's called the portfolio diet. You know how good I am at spelling portfolio. And this is a diet that was actually designed to help lower cholesterol. However, they have seen some beneficial effects on osteoarthritis. This portfolio diet is a vegetarian-based diet, and it emphasizes a portfolio of cholesterol-lowering foods. And some of these include nuts, fiber, soy protein, plant sterols, and high omega-3s. So you could see why a diet like this one might reduce overall inflammation and potentially aid in treatment for arthritis. What about glucosamine and chondroitin? I wish I had some statistics on the amount of money Americans spend on this supplement, but I didn't have a chance to look that up. But this is one of the most commonly taken supplements on the market. Good news and bad news about that. Good news is there is very low risk of taking this supplement, meaning most people don't have any side effects or medication interactions with taking this supplement. And so it's generally considered safe. Bad news is we have not seen that it significantly reduces osteoarthritis risk. However, couple things. Many of the studies were founded and conducted by an Italian company that is a large producer of glucosamine and chondroitin, and those studies coincidentally came out with positive results. When the National Institutes of Health and other government-type non-industry companies conducted their own research, they did not find the same positive results. So most meta-analyses say that glucosamine and chondroitin is not effective in prevention of osteoarthritis. However, in some studies, they have shown pain relief. And so if it helps you feel better, why not? As long as you're not spending all your money on it. And some studies have shown that it reduces the loss of the space between joints. And so, even though those weren't the primary outcomes of the study, that was significant. And I'm drawing two beautiful joints right now so that you can see what I'm talking about. But this could be, say, the knee joint, and this is the space between the knee joint. And so, if you reduce the loss of that space, you're less likely to have the bone on bone rubbing on one another. So that could potentially be good. But overall, not strong results, unfortunately. Okay, other nutritional issues. I'm going to bring these up. So with osteoarthritis, mobility can be significantly affected as well as quality of life. I mentioned already it could be difficult to open containers. It could be difficult to cook, to shop, to hold a vegetable and try to cut it, to wash fruits, to open cans. Many things like that could be very painful or difficult. If somebody is taking a medication, some common medications that are taking are anti-inflammatory medications, such as NSAIDs or non-steroidal anti-inflammatory meds. These are the number one cause of ulcers in elderly people, so they have their own risks. Opioids are also taken, as well as steroid drugs. And steroid drugs have the ability to often raise blood sugar and sometimes cause weight gain. There are some aids for people with arthritis, and I can bring some of these to class. So if you have trouble using your own hands to do things such as hold a bottle, button your shirt, open the lid, there are aids which make it possible for your grip to be wider and your grip to not have to be as closed. And these can help you do some of the activities of daily living that could be quite difficult with arthritis. These pictures crack me up because some of them I can't imagine using, but I actually have one of these forks that's quite like this that I'll bring to class. And so somebody with this wouldn't have to close their hand tightly to use it, and this would be quite effective. Also, this fork with this thumb ring so that it doesn't have to worry about you dropping it. And then this one, I'm not laughing at anybody who has arthritis, but I have actually tried this out and could not get it to work for the life of me. But this is like a sandwich clip so that your sandwich is held together by this, and then you strap this to your arm, and it could assist you in eating the sandwich. Clearly, I need some better instruction in how to do it because I ended up dropping most of the sandwich. But if you couldn't hold it, that could be something that was helpful as well. All right, our second type of arthritis we're going to talk about, rheumatoid arthritis. So rheumatoid arthritis is different from osteoarthritis in that it is an autoimmune disease, meaning the body is attacking itself and creating kind of this inflammatory response to its own tissues. Specifically, the inflammatory response happens in the synovial membrane, and this is the membrane that surrounds the joints. When the synovial membrane becomes inflamed, it can swell, it can be very painful, it can actually cause physiological changes in the bone formation and structure, and can eat away at the cartilage and bone due to some of these pro-inflammatory factors, as well as differences in osteoclasts and osteoblasts around the bone. What else was I going to say about this? Of course, this does increase with age because this is nutrition and aging. However, it is possible to have something called juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, and I actually have had students with this condition before. So this would be a rheumatoid arthritis that comes up very young in life, usually around 20 years of age, and it can be very painful. More women than men are affected in both rheumatoid and osteoarthritis, and it typically affects more joints. These are some pictures of stages of rheumatoid arthritis. In the first stage, the hand looks very normal. The second stage, some of the swelling of this joint has actually caused slight deformations in the hand. And then the third stage, you can see severe deformations in the hand due to swelling and inflammation of the joints, as well as breakdown of the bone. And so with this type of arthritis specifically, you can see how it would be very easy for somebody to have difficulty doing things such as opening a cup, opening a can, using a knife, holding a cup, holding the sandwich, opening a bag of chips, opening their medication, preparing foods, driving even. And this does affect the hand joints, but can also affect the elbows, the shoulders, the hips, the knees, even some of the small joints within the feet. So quite severe and much more widespread. I mentioned some of the symptoms already, and I did mention that the deformities in the hand lead to alterations in abilities of doing some of the ADLs and the IADLs, such as food prep or shopping, or even writing a check to pay the bills, or using a cell phone. Often people with arthritis have cell phones with larger numbers so that they're not forced to push a very small number on the cell phone. Rheumatoid cachexia can also happen, and remember that cachexia is an inflammation-based loss of muscle, or a loss of muscle due to a disease state. And so not only are these people experiencing inflammation within that joint, bone breakdown, but now they're also losing muscle, and muscles help support the joints. So they kind of have these three factors going against them. It is very common for people with rheumatoid arthritis to have subpar nutritional status for multiple reasons. Kind of the most obvious one, because it can affect their ability to cook, shop, prepare foods, even eat foods. But then for the second reason, because their body is in this constant state of inflammation and attack. And when we're under an inflammatory condition like that, we actually need more nutrients for day-to-day metabolism. Some dietary approaches for rheumatoid arthritis. So it is possible that people try elimination diets, and an elimination diet would be a diet where you cut out different foods and then you add them back in slowly and see if your symptoms of the rheumatoid arthritis disappear, stay the same, get better, get worse. People do have common trigger foods, and this is not an extensive list, but I have heard cereals can be a common trigger. So cereals, I'm writing on the computer, which doesn't work so well. Let's see if I can write with this. Cereals, wheat. Nope, the pen doesn't want to work. So wheat, eggs, beef, port, and I mean port as in port wine, which is a very sweet wine, coffee, corn, which may be in the cereals, oats. This is an interesting way to write oats, and rye. And a random one here, oranges. So these are all well-known foods that may be triggers to some people, and so people have tried diets where they eliminate those foods. I've also heard acidic foods, I've heard tomatoes, different things like that. But it would be depending on the person. Elemental diets. So this pictured here is an elemental formula. And what this means is it is a complete nutrition product, meaning it supplies everything you need. However, the form of nutrition has been totally broken down. So you have single carbohydrates such as glucose. You have single amino acids. You have medium chain triglycerides that don't require bile for digestion. You have vitamins and minerals. And so this is kind of like an anti-allergenic, anti-inflammatory type diet. They have seen reduction in symptoms with people who do use diets like this one. However, if you can imagine, the flavor and palatability of this, as well as the sustainability and cost, are pretty just poor. It does not taste very good. It's expensive, very monotonous, etc. So although it does work, it's not necessarily the best long-term solution. Other diets. So anti-inflammatory diets, I mentioned that portfolio diet earlier. That might be a good attempt. Some of the DASH type diets have worked. Diets that are high in fish, nuts, olive oil, turmeric, curcumin, whole grain foods, legumes, fruits, veggies, ginger, different spices such as capsicum. Those are all diets that are being looked at for rheumatoid arthritis. Reduce saturated fat and, of course, reduce trans fat. Vegetarian style diets have been shown to help with some of the symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis. Vegan diets, very good for rheumatoid arthritis, probably because most vegan diets, as long as they're planned appropriately, are very healthy and have many anti-inflammatory foods, as well as lower levels of things like saturated fats and trans fats. And then omega-3s and Mediterranean type diets are also good for pain reduction. I'm going to add one last thing on this because I actually have a student doing their senior project on this right now, and everything that student has found has been positive. And this is really cool. So probiotics seem to be a new treatment method for rheumatoid arthritis. And this particular student has looked at multiple individual studies as well as meta-analyses and found that probiotics can help with reduction in symptoms and kind of occurrences of rheumatoid arthritis. So that's very promising. All right, hope you guys learned a little bit about arthritis today. You definitely want to know the different types of arthritis, the risk factors, and some dietary approaches that may or may not help with arthritis. Thank you guys for being patient. If you have any questions on this lecture, feel free to email me and I will help confirm those for you. Okay,